At 19, Thad Meeker owned a shirt with one whole cuff, a broken shovel head tied to saddle leather, and half a day's pay that existed only in the mouth of a surveyor already riding east. He and Lucan Sayer had set fence posts along a military road all morning, driving cedar into ground so dry the iron rang. And when the line was finished, the foreman explained that warrants were delayed, that proper accounts took time, that boys without addresses should be grateful for future money. Then he mounted a horse borrowed from one of the men he had cheated and left them under a sky too clean to promise rain. They were called frontier men by people who saw them from wagons and needed a name with muscle in it. Up close, the name meant dust in the teeth, boot split under the ball of the foot, and the right to be ordered off land by men who could spell ownership. Thad was narrow, sun-browned, quick with his hands, and still young enough to feel shame before anger. Lucan was the same age, but built longer and darker, with a beard that made strangers treat him as if hunger were a character flaw. Between them, they carried the broken shovel head, Lucan's short-handled mattock, a patched flour sack, a tin cup, and 2 biscuits too hard for anything but soaking. By late afternoon, they were west of the last stage stop, walking the chalk breaks where the country lifted in white ribs from the buffalo grass. The bluffs were not mountains, only old beds of earth, left standing after softer ground had gone away. But in the slant light, they looked like walls of a ruined city. Draws cut among them, blind and pale. No tree grew higher than a bent willow near the dry creek. When the wind shifted north, grit came with it in a low sheet, and the sky remained cruelly clear. Lucan stopped on a ledge and rubbed his thumb along his lower teeth. Not rain. No, Thad said, meaner than rain. Below them, behind a spill of chalk blocks, a dark split opened in the bluff. It was no proper cave, just a south-facing pocket where animals or weather had worried the wall loose, but the mouth bent away from the wind. They crawled in one at a time. The roof was low enough to shave hair if a man forgot himself. The floor sloped inward under dust and broken swallow nests. At the back, where stone narrowed into a crease, a thread of air moved over Thad's cheek with a smell that stopped him as surely as a hand on his throat. Bread. He lifted his head too quickly and struck the roof. Chalk sifted over his hair. "You smell it?" Lucan asked. "It could be memory. Memory doesn't make my mouth water." They held still. The smell came again, faint but organized. Bread, onion skin, vinegar, banked coals, dried sage. Not a campfire carried by wind, not a wagon supper out on the flats. A kitchen smell, settled and impossible, slipping through the narrow back seam of a cave no one had claimed in sight of God or county. The sensible thing would have been to leave. A cooking smell meant people, and people meant dogs, guns, questions, and the sour humiliation of explaining hunger to someone standing behind a door. But dusk was coming. The dust front was already crawling low across the benches. Their biscuits were stone. The cave was too narrow to sleep in without one man's knees in the other's back, and the wall around the seam crumbled under Thad's fingers like packed meal. "We cut left," Lucan said. "Not through. Just enough to turn around." "We don't know what's there. We know what's here." That was true enough to become law. They worked in the fading light, passing the mattock and shovel head between them, shaving chalk from the side of the cave and dragging the spoil out in the patched sack. They did not speak much. Hunger had made their thoughts small and hard. Every few minutes the bread smell reached them again, stronger after each layer fell, and each time they worked with more care and less honesty about why. By full dark, they had widened the pocket enough for 2 bedrolls they did not own. Thad drove the shovel head into a pale patch near the seam and felt the tool strike something that answered with a low wooden note. Both men froze. The note traveled beyond the wall, changed, and returned as a tremor under Thad's palm. It was not hollow stone. It was a board, planned and tight-fitted, hidden behind chalk. Lucan reached for the mattock. Thad caught his wrist. Slow. If it's a chest, Lucan whispered, it isn't theirs if they buried it. If it's a wall, it is. The bread smell thickened. Somewhere beyond the board, metal clicked lightly against metal, a domestic sound, more frightening than a shout. Thad set the tool down, put his mouth near the seam, and called, "Hello in there." The answer was the scrape of a chair. Then a woman's voice, level and close. "Take your iron out of my wall." Lucan moved back so fast his shoulder hit the roof. Thad raised both hands though the wall still stood between them. "We didn't know," he said. "Men say that after every damage they like. We're cold. Cold men still steal." We smelled bread. For a moment only the dust spoke at the cave mouth. Then a sliver of wood shifted inward, no wider than 2 fingers. Lamplight made a blade in the dark, and along its edge appeared the black eye of a shotgun barrel. "You have names?" "Thad Meeker." "Lucan Sayer." "How old?" 19, Thad said. "Both?" Lucan nodded. "Then you are old enough to know a kitchen is not a cave." The hidden latch lifted before either could answer. A panel swung inward on leather hinges, and warm light spilled over their scraped floor. They had not found a chest. They had not found a ruin. They had dug into the back wall of a working kitchen built inside the chalk bluff. The room beyond was long, low, and exact. A black range sat beneath a stone hood. Copper pans hung from pegs hammered into beams darkened by smoke. Bundles of onion tops, peppers, and sage swayed from rafters. Crocks sat under waxed cloth. A table stood in the center, scrubbed pale by years of bread and labor. Shelves held jars, folded linen, stacked tin plates, flour sacks, seed jars, dried apples, and a row of small boards burned with marks. It was not wealth as towns measured wealth, but to starving men it was almost overwhelming. A room where need had been thought about before it arrived. The woman stood beside the open panel with the shotgun under one arm and a stove poker in her other hand. She was tall, brown-faced, and strong in the practical way of someone who had lifted more than she had been praised for. Her hair was wrapped in a white cloth dusted with flour. A wedding ring hung from a cord at her throat instead of on her hand. "You dug into Widow Hume's kitchen," she said. "Now you will help keep it from filling with half the prairie." The stove coughed. Smoke rolled down from the hood in a dark fold. She handed Lucan the poker. "Tall one, shut that panel halfway. Not all the way. You close it hard and the range will spit soot down the oven throat." Lucan obeyed before pride could take a breath. She thrust a wet cloth into Thad's hands. "Chalk hair, kneel there. Press this against the lower split. Not your hole, the one beside it. Feel for the knife of air." Thad knelt on the kitchen floor, warm under his knees, and found the invisible cut with his fingers. When the cloth covered it, the stove's cough softened. Widow Hume crossed to the range, opened a small iron belly door, and slid a flat tin shield into a slot. Flames beneath the lids leaned, corrected, then climbed straight. Smoke withdrew into the hood as if pulled by a rope. Only then did she lower the gun to the table. Thad looked down and saw the dust crescents his boots had left on her floor. Chalk covered his sleeves. Hunger stood in him like another person, shameless and staring at the loaf under cloth on the table. Widow Hume saw him looking. She cut 2 heels of bread, put them where the boys could reach, and said, "Eat after you tell me how far you widened and whether you cut the north drop." Lucan blinked. "The what?" "Then you don't know enough to sit." She took a lantern and stepped through the service panel into the cave. The boys followed because the room already seemed to have rules stronger than theirs. In the lantern light, Their damage became plain. They had shaved the left wall nearly to the hidden panel and nicked a darker seam that curved down behind the chalk. Widow Hume crouched, touched the seam, and smelled her fingertips. Mouse dust and cellar cool. You grazed the north drop. What is that? Thad asked. A poor question after cutting into it. She looked toward the cave mouth where the last blue of evening had turned black, and the wind was pushing grit across the floor. This pocket was never empty. It is the kitchen's breath. Low air comes through here, turns through the cold shelf, and leaves by a shaft no one sees from the road. It keeps the cistern steady, keeps flour dry, keeps smoke from telling every hungry rifle where a widow stands. You made a straight wound in a bent system. We didn't come with rifles, Lucan said. No, you came with ignorance and iron. Tonight, that is enough trouble. The truth had weight, because she did not throw it for sport. Thad looked at the broken shovel head, then at the warm room they had harmed. How do we mend it? For the first time, her face moved close to approval. Begin by not making it bigger. A gust struck the cave mouth and flattened dust against the back wall. From inside the kitchen came a faint ringing, like a spoon trembling in a cup. Widow Hume hurried back. On the table, beside the bread, was a shallow wooden tray filled with flour smoothed flat. Across the flour, a crescent crack had opened by itself. Bench wind, she said. Lucan, who had dug post holes on enough open country, looked toward the dark. A norther? Worse in a draw. Dust first, hail after midnight if the air turns hard, freeze by morning. If your cave is wrong when it hits, wind scours the kitchen and fire gets playful. If the cold drop gives way, the cistern sweats through the salt wall and every sack here spoils. Lucan looked around the room again, no longer at food alone, but at counted survival. Jars, meal, beans, salt, cloth, seed, a season's patience, a road's secret mercy. Widow Hume took a workboard from a nail near the stove. Burned into it were marks instead of writing, a crescent, 3 dots, a ladder, a crossed line, a hand with 2 fingers lifted. Thad, you can feel seams? I can. Lucan, you can swing a tool without shattering what you mean to save? Usually. Then earn bread. We turn your wound into a working mouth before the wind arrives full. Their first task was carrying, not cutting. From a side room low enough to brush Lucan's hair, they brought dried sod blocks, bundles of rye straw, rawhide strips soaking in a pail, flat chalk slabs wrapped in burlap, and willow ribs tied by size. Everything smelled of earth, smoke, and old planning. Widow Hume stood at the service panel and showed them the wall's layers. Chalk skin, straw, ash, lime, lath, air turn, then the kitchen. This is not a door, she said, tapping the panel. It is a service leaf, meant to open inward for repairs. Thin because it trusted the cave to stay narrow. You struck just below the hinge line. That is mercy, not skill. They rebuilt the torn edge, not as a seal, but as a bent throat. 2 sod blocks low, chalk above, straw rope twisted into the joint. Wet rawhide stretched along the inner curve. Widow Hume made them press flour through the new opening. It drifted in, touched the curve, lost its force, and fell into a waiting tray instead of flying toward the stove. The wind gets tired here, she said. Seems too simple, Lucan muttered. Most things that keep people alive are simple and exact. Men fond of speeches confuse that. She gave them bread then, and beans from a pot, and 1 cup of water each. Not charity, she said. Advance pay. Thad ate slowly because he wanted to be seen as less desperate than he was, but the bread still shook in his hand. As night deepened, the kitchen revealed itself in pieces. A crank by the range lifted a small shelf inside the stone hood. A copper pipe ran behind the plates, dipped through the floor, and returned wrapped in rag. A string beside the pantry curtain held small bones that clicked against the wall when the draft changed. Under the table, flat stones with iron rings covered storage pits. A shuttered square of polished tin in the ceiling borrowed a faint gray hint of sky through a hidden shaft. "This place was built by cooks," Lucan said, surprised. "Cooks, freighters, 2 laundresses, a wheelwright, a one-armed mason. My husband before fever took him, and later mostly me," Widow Hume said. "After Otho died, men with papers came to count horses, harness, stove iron, flour, and bolts of cloth. They counted widows as vacancies, so the people who still needed a station moved the working parts into the hill and left the outer house for the lists." "People know it's here?" Thad asked. "Those who must, those who know enough not to widen caves." The bones clicked 4 times. Widow Hume took down another board. "Dust front." She sent Lucan to the cave mouth with wet sackcloth and Thad for willow ribs. Under her direction, they lashed a bent screen across the opening. It did not close the cave. It broke the wind. Dust struck and sifted down instead of knifing straight toward the panel. At the bottom, she made them leave a low gap, no wider than a boot. "Rabbits can pass," she said. "Air can pass. Men must kneel. Men won't like that. Then they may stand outside and enjoy themselves." For an hour, the screen held. Dust thickened until the cave mouth became a brown blur. The lamp burned small and steady. Widow Hume covered the bread, sealed the flour bins with damp cloth, and taught the boys the flour tray. Straight crack for cave draft, crescent for bench wind, feather for roof shaft, pox for grit through the stranger slot. The stranger slot hid behind a narrow cupboard. When she opened it, the boys saw a stone passage no taller than a man's chest leading to an unseen box at the outer bluff. A person outside could pass a cup, a note, a coin, or an empty hand without discovering the kitchen. "Men ashamed of hunger use a small opening better than a door," she said. "Pride can pass through without bruising." A heavy gust hit. Somewhere under the floor, water slapped. Widow Hume turned sharply. "Cold drop." The cold drop opened beneath a trap in the side room. A ladder descended through square timbers into damp mineral darkness. Widow Hume tied a rope around her own waist, but Thad stopped her before he had sense enough to fear her anger. "If you slip, we don't know enough to bring you up right." Lucan said, "Let me go. I'm longer." "Longer jams," she said after one hard look at the opening. Thad goes. Lucan holds. I tell. So Thad descended with a lantern. 10 rungs below the kitchen, the shaft opened into a chamber of barrels, salt bins sealed with pitch, slatted apple shelves, and a black gap where cold air entered under the bluff. Their digging had shaken loose a wedge of chalk near that gap. A fitted stone lip at its base was wet along one edge. Widow Hume's voice came from above. "Do you see cedar shims in a pocket?" He found them. Thin oiled wedges, cloth packets, a mallet head without a handle. Under her instruction, he cleared loose chalk, pressed cloth into the sweating seam, and set the shims above it, tapping with his fist around the mallet head. The cold air changed tone. It no longer whistled like a cut. It breathed through shape. "Not tight," she called. "Never tight on a cold mouth. Make it remember form, not forget air." When he finished, he saw marks scratched into the hidden stone. A wheel, a loaf, a handcart, a cradle, a broken horseshoe. Not a diary, proofs of passage perhaps, left by people who had paid in work or survival, because letters were not required by weather. He climbed up shaking. Widow Hume inspected his damp knees and chalked sleeves. "You listened?" I did what you said. Not the same. Near midnight, 3 dull knocks came through the stranger slot. Widow Hume lifted the shotgun but did not raise it. She opened the inner panel a finger's width. "Miss Hume?" A man's voice called through dust. "You lit?" "I know that voice," she said. "Say your need, Mr. Barrett." 2 wagons broke east wheel ruts. Woman with child sick. Team won't face the dust. 6 souls, 8 animals. And Mason Bleck's men are behind us with a powder cart. At the name, Widow Hume's expression hardened. "Bleck says the bluff is county line," the voice coughed. "Says no widow owns what's under it." "Bleck should be 40 miles south," she said. Then she looked at the boys. "Now your whole matter's twice." Bleck arrived before the wagons, his voice thrown ahead of him by the storm. He came to the cave mouth with 2 men and a mule cart, a survey chain over one shoulder, and a hammer in his hand. He kicked the willow screen and laughed when it forced him to stoop. "Widow," he shouted, "I know your smoke trick. Come out and sign plain before the county does it for you." Widow Hume stood inside the kitchen beside the service leaf, shotgun ready but low. Bleck kicked the screen again. Dust dumped off it onto his boots. "Found your back den. Morning, I open it with bars. Good lime in this hill. Good roadbed. You cannot hide a public resource in widow weeds." Thad felt anger move through him fast and hot. He thought of the surveyor, unpaid labor, paper promises, men who called another person's shelter public only after they imagined profit in it. His hand closed around the broken shovelhead. Widow Hume touched his wrist. Anger is quick and poor at carpentry. Bleck crouched to peer through the low gap and was forced nearly to his knees. Dust stuck to his beard. He cursed, stood, and shouted that he would return at morning. Then he retreated toward the blurred cart. Widow Hume exhaled once. "We shelter the wagons through the stranger approach. Then we make this cave useful in a way Bleck does not understand." The next hours became work without room for dread. Mr. Barrett reached the bluff first, tied to the others by rope. Behind him came a pregnant woman wrapped in a quilt, a boy clutching a chicken crate, an old father with a sawed breath, and 2 hired hands carrying a girl with a twisted ankle. Widow Hume did not open the kitchen to all of them. She used the stranger slot as designed. Cups of water went out. Wet cloths went out. Bread and onion broth went out through the stone box. For those too weak to crouch in the wind, she opened a side passage invisible from the cave, leading to a lee trench behind a fallen slab. The lee trench looked from outside like a washed animal run along the bluff. Inside, with the right slab lifted, it became a pocket large enough for people to crouch and animals to stand nose to tail. Old hitch rings were set into stone. A half barrel of chopped hay waited under a mud-sealed lid. When Widow Hume turned a kitchen crank, water came through a pipe in careful pulses. Not much, but enough to wet mouths. The pregnant woman gripped Thad's sleeve as he helped her sit. "Who lives in that hill?" "A widow with rules." She gave a weak laugh. "Praise rules, then." Back in the cave, Widow Hume showed the boys the dead echoes. Behind loose chalk were hollow gourds coated in pitch and half filled with sand. Old freighter tricks used to change how a wall answered a hammer. Hung wrong, a packed seam sounded empty. Hung right, a dangerous secret sounded like dead earth. "Bleck will test the cave," she said. "He wants a clean hollow or good lime. We give him neither." They hung the dead echoes behind the screen and along the widened wall, then packed chalk around them. Lucan tapped with the mattock handle while Widow Hume listened from inside. "Again," she said, until every strike returned dull and unpromising. It felt to Thad like tuning a lie in order to protect a truth. Near dawn, dust thinned, and hail began. First small, then hard enough to snap against stone. Widow Hume gave them coffee, boiled thin as apology, and watched them over the rim of her cup. You have been paid in bread, beans, and coffee. What you do after sunrise is choice. Thad looked at Lucan. Their faces were gray with fatigue. They had nowhere to go, but she had already taught them that absence of elsewhere was not the same as choice. I choose to fix what I cut, Thad said. Lucan took longer. I choose not to be chased from the only room that fed me. Widow Hume accepted this with a short nod. Then listen close. Morning came white and bitter. Hail crusted the ground, and dust froze in ridges along the screen. Bleck returned with a pry bar and hammer. Thad and Lucan sat outside the cave mouth on stones, looking like two boys who had slept badly in a worthless hole. You working this cave? Bleck asked. Trying to, Lucan said. For what? Shelter? Bleck laughed. Poor choice. Hill's dead chalk. He stepped inside and struck the wall. The dead echoes answered thick and dull. He struck near the service leaf. The bent throat swallowed the note. He frowned, tapped lower, then higher. Nothing rang. Smelled smoke here last night. Wind brought it, Lucan said. Maybe from your own men. For a moment, the cave held two hungers, theirs for shelter and his for claim. Then one of Bleck's men called from the false face down the bluff, where old jars had been set years ago to make a bright, hollow sound. Bleck forgot the boys and strode out, hammer raised. Widow Hume's voice came faintly through the service leaf. Good. Now the root line. The north root line lay in a crawl concealed under a chalk shelf at the back of the cave. Lucan's shoulders jammed at the second turn, so Thad went alone on his belly with a lantern tied to one wrist and a roll of clay cloth pushed ahead. Widow Hume spoke through a small pipe from the kitchen floor. At the narrow place you will feel 3 ribs. Do not pull them. They are not roots. The ribs were bent ash strips holding the passage open. Behind them, a wedge of wet chalk bulged inward. Their widening had shaved the line. Hail melt was finding it. Thad packed the clay cloth into the wound, slid willow hoops into notches, and tightened them with rawhide, while his chest scraped stone each time he breathed. At the far end of the crawl, he found an iron stake driven through the upper wall from outside. Its point had pierced the root line and bent one ash rib. Bleck's survey stake. He had wounded the kitchen before he even found it. "Can you pull it?" Lucan called from behind. Widow Hume's voice came through the pipe. "No. If he pulls, the seam runs. Bend it flat if you can. Pad around it if you cannot." Thad looped his belt over the stake and hauled sideways. The iron resisted, then gave with a groan. Chalk sifted onto his neck. He froze until the passage held. Then he packed clay around the bent stake, set a hoop over it, and pressed beside it a small repair block Widow Hume had sent in his pocket, marked with a crooked nail. When Lucan pulled him out by the ankles, Thad emerged, shaking and filthy. Widow Hume looked him over. Alive? Mostly. Work? Ugly. Ugly holds often enough. By noon, Bleck's hammering at the false face had turned to curses. The travelers needed more water, and the drawbox pump along the bluff had clogged with hail grit. Thad and Lucan went out under sacks, lifted the stone cover, cleared grit from the horizontal pump, and worked the lever until a brass bead rose in its little glass window. Widow Hume had told them to stop at the bead. Too much pressure could harm old seams. Lucan stopped exactly there. As they lowered the cover, one of Bleck's men slipped toward the real cave with a crowbar. Lucan caught him by the coat before he tore more than one rawhide tie from the screen. The young man threw up both hands. "I only wanted to see." "See what?" Thad demanded. "The old woman. Bleck says she's dead on county paper. Says if she shows, he'll call it a squatter trick. Says there are silver stores behind the kitchen smoke." Thad stared. You knew it was a kitchen. The man, whose name was Omer, looked sick with realizing he had said too much. Bleck's shout rolled from the false face. Widow Hume opened the service leaf just enough for her voice. Mason Bleck. He stopped 10 paces from the cave. Recognition crossed his face and hardened there. You still owe me for 12 sacks of cornmeal from the flood year, she said. Bleck smiled without warmth. Thought ghosts forgave debt. Only after payment. His own men heard it. So did the travelers in the Lee Trench. The old debt placed him in a record he had hoped to erase. This hill is listed unimproved, he snapped. My kitchen improved it before your boots learned mud. Your claim died with Otho. My hunger did not. Nor did the roads. Bleck pointed toward the cave. You shelter thieves in there. I shelter need and put it to work. You came with powder and lies. Which shall I name first? His jaw worked. You cannot prove a hidden kitchen is a station. No, Widow Hume said. The kitchen proves it by operating. That afternoon, she made it do so before witnesses. The stranger slot passed water and broth to the travelers. The stove cooked without revealing smoke above the bluff. The cold drop produced dry meal, apples, salt, and clean cloth. The Lee Trench held animals against the wind. Thad kept the cave tray cleared and the new throat steady. Lucan pumped to the bead and stopped. Widow Hume never exposed more of the kitchen than was needed. But every cup, every pulse of water, every breath of warm food made Bleck's claim of vacancy smaller. The demonstration did not make him decent. It made him careful. He shifted to threats about land officers, quarry rights, county lime, and hidden hazards. Widow Hume answered each with a task completed in plain sight. By evening, his men were listening less to him and more to the work. Then the flour tray split in a pattern Widow Hume had not shown them, a straight line down the middle, feathered by small branches. She stared. Roof shaft ice. The ceiling tin had gone black. Hail and dust had sealed the hidden shaft that gave the range a high draw. If it stayed closed, the stove would pull from the cave and root line, dragging smoke toward the storage pits and the Lee Trench where people slept. The shaft mouth is above the bluff, Widow Hume said, near Bleck's false face. Lucan reached for his coat. No, you are too heavy for the upper crust. Thad goes. The path began behind the hanging onions, up a ladder no wider than a rail, through a throat of chalk and timber. Widow Hume tied a rope to Thad's waist and gave him a hooded lantern and a hooked scraper. If the crust breaks, fall flat. If the lid comes free too fast, let it go. Do not save iron with your face. If you see a square stone with a nail hole, do not step on it. It is the old smoke cap, and it lies. The climb scraped his knees and elbows raw. At the top, a wooden lid pressed against packed hail. Thad worked the scraper through a side slot, loosening ice a handful at a time, until the lid opened enough for him to see the bluff crown. The world shone white under the late sun. Bleck's cart stood near the false face. The travelers' wagons hunched along the rut road. The roof shaft was a low stone ring hidden among chalk blocks, its screen packed solid. Thad lay flat on the crust and began clearing it. Twice the ground settled with a sound like cloth tearing. He spread his weight and kept working. Boy, a voice said below him. Bleck stood 20 feet away with the survey chain in his hand. Move away from that cap. No. Do you know what she'll pay you? Bread and an old woman's thanks. I can give you day wage. I can give your tall friend a place on a freight outfit. I can give you paper saying you improved this cave. Thad thought of the surveyor riding east. Paper is light. Only to men who never held any. Yesterday, the insult might have found a wound. Today, Thad had held a cold mouth together in the dark and seen marks under a table where work outlived law. He scraped another sheet of ice from the screen. Blake stepped closer. She has stores in that hill while men starve. Men did eat through the slot. You watched. I watched theater. You watched a kitchen work. Blake lifted the chain and threw it across the shaft ring. The links clattered over the ice screen, knocking loose a slab too large. The shaft inhaled. From below came Widow Hume's shout. The sudden draft yanked Thad's lantern flame sideways and jerked the lid in his hand. If the screen opened at once, the stove would surge and smoke would push where people breathed. Thad threw himself over half the ring, pressing his coat across the opening while clawing the chain away. Blake grabbed the chain to pull it back. Thad held. The links cut through his palm. Lucan's voice roared from the slope, and Omer came behind him. Blake released the chain and stepped back with his hands raised. Storm loosened it, he said. Omer looked at the disturbed links, at Thad's bleeding hand, and down the slope where the hidden kitchen continued to breathe because a ragged boy lay over its shaft. He threw it, Omer said. Blake turned on him. Careful. Omer's voice shook but held. He threw it. Those words did not end Blake. Words rarely end men like him. But they changed the weather around him. His own men would not meet his eyes. Mr. Barrett and the hired hands were climbing from the lee trench. Lucan had a stone in one hand and the patience not to throw it. Blake gathered the chain, cursed them all as liars, and retreated to his cart, promising officers, papers, and return. Widow Hume, speaking through the service slot from below, told him to bring the cornmeal debt with him. Thad cleared the shaft in controlled handfuls until the draw steadied. When he climbed down, Widow Hume cleaned his cut palm with vinegar and wrapped it in linen. You used your body as a stove part. Didn't know what else to use. Try not to invent that tool twice. Night fell clear and hard. The ceiling tin borrowed starlight. The range drew clean. The cold drop held. The root line held around the bent stake. Travelers slept in the lee trench, animals quiet nose to tail. Widow Hume sat at the table across from the boys for the first time without the shotgun between them. You may sleep in the cave, she said. Not the kitchen. The cave. The new throat must be watched every 2 hours. If flour gathers, brush it out. If the bones strike steady, close the low loop. If the pipe drums, wake me. If a man kicks the screen, wake Lucan first. Why me? Lucan asked from the edge of sleep. Your face discourages conversation. That time, she almost smiled. Thad's first watch came near midnight. He sat in the widened cave with a patched wool blanket around his shoulders. The willow screen showed stars through its cracks. Behind him, the service leaf glowed with a line of kitchen light. The cave no longer felt like shelter stolen from emptiness. It felt like the outside chamber of a breathing place that had accepted him only because he had learned where not to cut. He brushed flour from the tray once. He adjusted the low loop when the bone string clicked in pairs. He listened to Lucan snore, and Widow Hume move softly beyond the wall, banking fire, setting down iron, closing some hidden part with care. He thought about his own mother, dead 3 winters, who had owned no station kitchen and no marks under a table, only a washboard and a cough that weather kept making worse. He wondered how many good rooms in the world had survived only because someone stubborn hid them from men with lists. At dawn, the pregnant woman's fever had lessened and no child had arrived, which everyone accepted as mercy. Omer asked whether a man who had driven stakes wrong could pull them right. Widow Hume handed him a crowbar and no comfort. He pulled 3 before breakfast. For 2 days, the kitchen operated at the edge of exposure. Wagons came out of the storm ruts. One carried a schoolteacher with frostbitten fingers. One carried 2 discharged soldiers, too proud to admit weakness until broth reached them. A lone woman arrived with a broken harness and left after mending 2 of Widow Hume's bucket straps. Through it all, the stranger slot fed first. The lee trench sheltered when wind rose, and the cave throat became something new because of the boy's damage. An outer room where a person could kneel, speak need, pass a cup, and remain unknown if shame required it. "You are making the hole better than before," Lucan said one evening as Widow Hume adjusted the curve. "I am making the damage confess its purpose," she answered. On the third day, a land officer came from Fort Lark with Mr. Barrett and a woman named Miss Wren, whose record books were wrapped in oilcloth. She was not the officer Bleck would have chosen. She listened before opening the books. She knelt at the cave mouth because the opening required it. She watched the pump bead rise, the stranger slot pass water. The flower tray read the wind, and the cold drop produced stores without damp. She inspected the bent survey stake in the root line and the old marks hidden under the table leg. When she asked who had worked repairs, Widow Hume named the dead first. Otho Hume, the one-armed mason, the laundresses, the freighters, the wheelwright, the sister who set shelves before going south. Then she named the living. When she reached Thad and Lucan, Thad expected to be named as damage. "These two cut wrong," Widow Hume said, then learned the shape of their wrongness and held it. Miss Wren wrote that down in different words. Bleck arrived late and found witnesses instead of vacancy. He argued claim, mineral right, widow incapacity, hidden stores, public resource, and fraud. Miss Wren let him spend every word. Then she asked him to show where the land had failed improvement. Bleck pointed at the blank bluff. Widow Hume opened the stranger slot and passed out 6 cups of water. Miss Wren closed her book. Improvement visible to hunger may remain invisible to greed and still be improvement. "That is not statute," Bleck said. "No," she answered. "It is observation. Statute will take longer." It did take longer. Protection came in awkward pieces. A temporary station notation, a warning against quarrying, a disputed map, witness marks from travelers, and a letter with 3 seals and 2 spelling errors. Bleck did not vanish. He circled in rumors. He called the kitchen a squatter den, then a charity nuisance, then a hazard to stock. Each accusation required an answer in work. The bluff held because it was maintained, not because paper finally noticed it. Thad and Lucan stayed through those weeks because leaving became less sensible than staying, and because Widow Hume never offered belonging in a way pride could dramatize. She offered tasks. Lucan learned to set dead echoes and remove them when truth needed a fair sound. Thad learned to read the flower tray by the first fracture. They pumped to the bead, patched without sealing, cut willow screens, and slept in the cave they had widened, now reshaped into a proper outer chamber with a bench, a stone lip for cups, and a weighted half-gate built from the hinge of Widow Hume's old visible house. On the inside of that gate, Widow Hume burned 3 marks, a cup, a bent line of wind, and a hand holding a tool. Then she handed the iron to Thad. "Add yours." "For cutting wrong?" "For repairing after." He burned a crooked nail. Lucan burned a mattock with a split handle. Their marks looked crude beneath the older ones, which seemed right. By late summer, road people called the place Widow Hume's back kitchen, though most never saw more than the cave throat and the stone slot. Some left coins, some left work. A carpenter repaired the bench. A woman traveling west with 2 nephews left seed and showed Widow Hume a drying method for okra. A soldier carried in a fevered friend at midnight and left at dawn with broth in him and silence around his dignity. Bleck passed once with a freight team and did not stop. Thad did not become unhomeless all at once. Some mornings, he woke in the cave and felt the old certainty that a voice would order him out, that every blanket was borrowed against future shame. Widow Hume did not soothe this with promises. She handed him the roof shaft scraper or the tray brush. Work did not cure fear, but it gave fear a place to put its hands. Near dusk on a hot August day, after the pump leather had been mended and the bead rose clean again, a boy younger than they had been came to the gate with one sleeve torn away and blood dried at his temple. Behind him staggered an older man carrying a saddle and no horse. They had been robbed after fever turned them out of a ranch camp. The boy stood at the cave gate and tried to ask directions instead of help. His voice failed. Thad was in the outer chamber. Lucan stood at the draw pipe. Widow Hume watched from the kitchen with one hand on the breadcloth. Thad knelt so his face was level with the boy's. He pushed a cup through first, then bread, then a wet cloth. He did not open the gate wide. Need did not require spectacle. "What place is this?" the boy whispered. Thad looked back once. Widow Hume gave him no answer to borrow. He turned to the boy. "A kitchen with a narrow mouth. Put your hand through if you need more. Put your back into work when you can stand." The boy stared, as if deciding whether kindness with rules could be trusted. Lucan pumped to the bead and stopped exactly there. Widow Hume lifted the cloth from the waiting loaf. The kitchen smelled of bread, onion skin, clean water, and stone held in the shape of patience. Outside, the frontier widened in every direction, hungry and bright and careless. Inside the cave, throat, where two homeless young men had once cut wrong because they knew only empty land and their own need. Air bent, slowed, and entered useful. Thad brushed a little flour from the tray. The crack it left was straight, calm, and easy to read. He let the weighted gate close, not to refuse the road, but to keep the room alive for the next opening.